let's just
let's just get into it. Okay.
No, because since I am irreligious, I think that there's like this perception of non-religious people just like not having morals, because, or at least that's like the argument that religious people have.
Oh yeah.
That it's just like, well, if there's no God, then I can just like rape and kill everything. And like, no. I still like people. I still enjoy life and the things that come from it, regardless of the reason as to why that is.
If anything, if we're talking about good and bad people, you'd be a better person because you're not fearing consequence.
Yes. And so that's one thing that why do people need to have fear in order to do good things?
Because some people are very bad people.
Yeah, but if the things are good themselves, then you don't need to be coerced because it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Logically,
yeah. I mean, but to be a good person requires a level of self-sacrifice that other people aren't willing to perform.
Sure. But I mean, we do self-sacrifice. Shift this over here. All right. We do self-sacrifice, like, for things that we don't like. Like, we're forced to have, like, day jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, no, I have to sacrifice all of this to keep, like, living.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's not even that great of a result. Like, hooray, I'm trapped in this vicious cycle, as opposed to the other things that we do that, like, humans actually enjoy, like art and friends, and where you make a thing and you're like, wow, I felt really good about that. That took a long time and developing skills and stuff, but, like, I feel really good about this. Hopefully, at least. If you... It's a long road of self-loathing until you can look at your own work and go, okay.
And even then, you're like, I guess.
Sure. But we make that sacrifice for something that we care about, regardless if it keeps us alive.
Mm-hmm. However, like the whole day job situation, there's an immediate consequence of not being able to eat.
Sure.
That's when your instinctive self-preservation kicks in. You're like, I guess I'll do stuff I hate because I like living more.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a conundrum of society in general, but I think that for doing good things, like stuff that isn't even law, but just like, I don't know, cleaning up after yourself in public.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, if you go to McDonald's and you, like, eat at one of their tables and then you just get up and leave. Like, there's no law or anything that tells you to clean that up, but they make it very clear by putting trash cans right next to the door.
Easily accessible. Can you write that into the Bible? Maybe,
Clean up after yourself, I think, is
11th commandment.
But it's pretty general. But I mean, like I told you last time, like working at a grocery store, and people just leaving carts wherever. That's not something that is law or whatever, but you're a pretty good person. Not even a pretty good person. You're just moderately better than a terrible person by just cleaning up after yourself. And the results may not be as clear or direct, but there are good results from that. I guess, like, is the evidence not substantial enough for doing a good thing?
I guess not for some people. If it was really obvious, then we wouldn't have this whole debate as a society of what's the, what's a good person, what isn't.
But like, so humans need laws in order to tell them what not to do.
Yeah, apparently.
Laws are rarely like proactive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's like the do your taxes part.
Yeah.
Which in the US, yes. In other countries, not as much. But like, that's a proactive law that you have to do something. In general, most laws are don't do things.
Yeah.
Like in the 10 Commandments, 9 of them are don'ts.
Yeah.
And 1 of them is a do.
Yes.
With the consequence of eternal hellfire.
For breaking what? 1 of those rules?
Yeah.
Once?
Yes. And so we can look at those laws, except for the first one because that's more subjective. But like, don't steal generally kind of works with the golden rule, as you said last time, that if I don't want to be treated a certain way, then I shouldn't treat someone else this way. And we can see how if this law becomes accepted and people don't do that thing, then things are pretty well off, right?
There's always going to be people who make exceptions. But generally speaking, that would be, if everyone adopted that to their moral code, then yeah. Yeah,
and so the effect of it is people not stealing things. This is with like Kant and the categorical imperative, where the categorical imperative says, like, if a law is going to become like a law, then it has to apply universally. And so I always use the example of lying, because let's say it becomes a law to lie. You have to lie. If that becomes true and everybody follows it, then there is no actual truth anymore. The concept of lying is dependent on the concept of truth. And so by making it a universal law to lie, there is no more concept of truth. Therefore, there is no more concept of lie. And so it like can't work.
Okay.
So laws that can apply have to be logically consistent universally. Which is, I mean, the 10 Commandments are pretty sound in that. If, killing versus not killing, if everybody kills and there's no one left to kill, so then nobody can follow the killing law.
Yeah, but that doesn't work in house, because then war wouldn't be a thing.
Yes. But that's why you should follow it.
Right.
Because if everybody kills, then everybody's dead.
Okay.
Therefore, don't kill.
Don't kill.
And then don't lie. And I feel as though, like, not lying, for me, is fairly justified, regardless of, like, the law itself, but because of the repercussions of lying.
So where do white lies fall in that?
They're usually not necessary.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a perfect person, and I'm not like
what?
that radically honest.
What?
But I try my best to be. But like, white lies in the case of not hurting someone's feelings, let's say, I generally try to put the truth in as gentle a way as possible. And so the quintessential man example is, does this make my butt look fat? Rather than say, no, if it does make your butt look fat, you could say, maybe try something else on and see how that works. I like that one better.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you're not lying and saying your butt looks fat. You're saying, I like how that one looks better.
And implying that, yes, your butt looks fat, but we can fix it. Or you could say, oh, girl, your butt looks fat, pH fat.
Yeah. That girl thick. Or establish a level of communication to where you are allowed to say, because then that's the other thing, is that you're putting someone in a situation where they're not allowed to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And if you're put in a situation where you're not allowed to tell the truth, why would you expect someone to tell the truth?
Maybe they want you to lie.
And that's why communication is important, and it's important to establish a rapport with everyone. Kind of what I do with this podcast anyway, is to be able to communicate honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't mind, like, I try to say some things that people don't like just so that those things are in their face and they're not just living in a bubble, I guess.
Mm.
But I want this to be an environment of open conversation. And so if, like, it should be allowed to say, nah, I don't like religion.
Get out of here right now.
And the more situations that we put people in
Mm-hmm.
where they have to lie in order to, I don't know, protect someone's feelings or protect just the social norm, then we continue to seclude and separate our society to where people aren't, either they just don't communicate and go crazy, or they create just these other smaller sectors of radical, crazy people, which we've seen.
Yeah. Very detached from reality.
And so, yes, I've gone on this tangent, and I'm sorry that I'm the one talking most of this.
No, that's all right. We're going to interview you.
But that's kind of what happened with the election, is that the left, the regressive left,
Mm-hmm.
as people call it, has become so restrictive of free speech that the people who were on, like, the margins of being radicals just got pushed even farther, to where, you know what? Maybe I do hate black people just because you're telling me not to hate black people, even though I said something that wasn't even really racist. So I'm just going to go over here to this margin and vote for Donald Trump because he says things that he wants to, and I want to say what I want to. And regardless of if they even support the man, they just support what he stands for.
Yeah, I've heard that argument. Yeah. He says what's on his mind.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't try to, like, I don't know, sugarcoat anything, but at the same time, it's like, do you hear what he says, though?
Yes. I think Sam Harris tweeted today that, like, anyone who defends Donald Trump is morally compromised. Because there's just no defending it anymore. If you defend the man, then there's something questionable about your ethics.
Yeah, at this point, definitely.
And so, like, well, is it okay to say hateful things about people? I mean, yes, you have free speech and you're able to do so. But if we treat society in a way that those things don't have consequences, then more of those things are going to happen. And so we are going to get rallies of people who band together to try to stop a statue of Robert E. Lee with torches at night.
I didn't hear about that.
That happens. There was no coverage about it. There were no, I think the cops were called, but like everyone just dispersed. Like nothing happened. There was no riot gear or tear gas. Yeah.
Interesting.
To stop a statue of Robert E. Lee from being torn down. Yeah.
Oh, God.
And so the longer that we, again, I think that free speech should be allowed in the classical liberal sense, which should allow people to say racist things and allow them to face the consequences of saying those racist things.
Yeah. I mean, originally free speech was, meant for like not being subjected to like government censorship and stuff like that. So like the government can't shut you down. But yeah, in terms of like just, free speech in like a day-to-day conversation, like yeah, you can say whatever, racist, terrible thing you want to say. I also have the free speech to shut you down for it.
Yeah, and even just have a logical conversation and talk about why it's morally reprehensible to treat someone differently because of their skin color.
At that point, if they're saying the opposite of that, like logic isn't going to be.
I don't know. I think that there's lots of cases of people that go to like the KKK and just talk to people, and then they realize that like the KKK people are like, oh hey, like this racist thing isn't even really that great. So
why am I here?
Yeah, and so if we actually just talk to people and let them know that humans are humans, then they're more willing to embrace that than try to enforce some form of power over people.
I don't think I've ever actually had a conversation, just a sit down, like calm conversation with someone who advocated racism. Maybe not like on purpose, because usually people who do defend that sort of stance, they never say, oh, I am a racist and that's what I think. It's more like I've rationalized it in my mind that this is okay to say. And I've never actually heard their defense on that. Have you ever thought about doing like a podcast and getting like two people of opposite? It could spell disaster, but it would probably be an interesting show.
I actually had a conversation with someone today, and it's different with different people. This guy is smart, and so like he had a defense.
Really?
Stuff like a book called The Bell Curve. And it's basically a study of IQ based on like race. And so it was just like taking IQ measurements of different races and then just looking at what comes up. And a lot of times people get like really shut down for even like talking about the bell curve. But the results did show a correlation between race and IQ. And so it showed that like Asians are statistically more likely to have a higher IQ, and then white people, and then Arab, and then Hispanic, and then Black. I think that was the order. But the person who did the study is not racist. He just did the study. And having information like that is hard for people to discuss.
Mm.
And so a lot of times what happens is people just shut it down. And so it calls to mind, is there information that we shouldn't have? Because some people seem to say, yes, that the radical left say, regardless of whether or not that's true, that is dangerous and you shouldn't put it out there.
Mm.
Or should we just look at all of the truth and then decide what we do with the universe based on the truth that the universe gives us?
I'll have to look more into that. I've never heard of it, but the first thing that comes into mind is, I guess, what kind of people they did the experiment on.
I haven't looked at it intensively either.
Well, because it brings up the argument of that whole nature versus nurture. Is it really because, it's like a race thing, or is it like environment? Like, I'm not...
I think it did test for like all different socioeconomic classes or whatever. Something that I've heard, just fairly good idea that counters it, is just IQ measures specific things. And so the context by which different races and their environments, or at least genetically or whatever, like the things that IQ measures may not be of the same value to different cultures or races or whatever. So, but then the other part is just like, why would you value someone more or less because of their IQ?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, if that's being used as a basis for like racism, it's like, so do you think people who are not as smart as you get to be treated as less of a person than you?
And so the conversation I was having with this person, I did say that we should just accommodate everyone so that everyone can achieve whatever level of benefit to themselves and society that they can. So it's like, you either, I find that whenever people try to handicap people that are higher up in order to make the people that are below the same, it doesn't make us better.
I've seen that, yeah.
So instead, we should accommodate and raise it from the bottom up and be able to, okay, well, why is this person not as intelligent as the next person? Okay, well, let's see how we can change the environment and accommodate everyone to where everyone can be as intelligent as they can be. And that way, rather than look at the differences in intelligence between different people, we can actually just try to make everyone as smart as possible. Ideally.
I guess if you're, basing your value as a society solely on intellect.
Right, and other stuff like, I don't know, mental health.
It's like, obviously the most intelligent people in our society are what, create progress. It's what carries the rest of society along with them, to a better, smarter future. but maybe, and this is just me talking, obviously, but like how you're treated as a person shouldn't rely on that, even if you're, on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
The ice cream truck is really distracting.
Right? I'm amazed, one, that the ice cream truck is even coming around here, and two, that
13 floors up, I hear
you still hear it.
I hear kids skateboarding.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll tuck myself into bed at like 8:30 at night, and all of a sudden I hear skateboards like 13 stories down. Like, how does this happen?
Sound carries and I guess bounces off the opposite building and whatever.
I'm like, what's the point? I'm 13 stories up. By the time I get down there to get some ice cream, it's gone.
That's true.
Well, I lost my train of thought with that one.
Accommodating society to...
based solely on intellect.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe not as a reward system based on how smart you are.
Mm-hmm. Well, society has value other than intellect, obviously. But intellect is highly valued.
Mm-hmm.
And I do find that, and there's like various different arguments regarding like social construct and just culture in general. But intellect is highly valued in a society that doesn't have to run from lions.
Work smart, not hard.
Yeah. So if I were dropped in the jungle, I would not be as smart as someone who has lived there all their life and be able to survive in the jungle by themselves. My IQ is really low in the jungle.
What movie too?
Said that. That's not me. That's someone
gotcha.
else said that. But so like whatever values of intellect that we have, it's subjective through different things. There are objective measures of intellect, maybe pattern recognition, and like speed at which we do math or something. I don't know, but like. Everyone's different. No one is equal in the sense of like how good someone is at something.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's different, but everyone should be valued equally. And I think that just extends morally.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking about like the social construct thing, you're fairly more integrated in like the whole gender thing.
How so? As in like...
No, you've made bracelets and your Instagram.
Oh yeah, so I know some of the terms.
Yeah. Much more than I know. And so a lot of people just say that like gender is a social construct, and that's easy enough, but like society still has to run on social constructs. And so that's kind of a harder thing, is that we have to reshape social constructs in order to accept these different ways of expressing the way that we communicate towards one another. As far as gender roles, I don't really care. I want to do drag at some point. It sounds like a lot of fun. I'm a straight cisgender male. I don't care.
If you're gonna look good, you look good.
Yeah, but more as like a performance.
Which that's actually entirely what it is.
Yeah. No, I did sound for a drag show last night. So yes.
Did you?
Yeah.
Was it fun? I've never been to a drag show. I really need to go.
You should. I'll let you know when the next one is. But if we're treating like gender roles and how people are shaped by it, and we are also two cisgendered people talking about gender, but
Oh wow, assuming.
oh, okay. Was I wrong in assuming that you are female?
I actually don't care. I don't know. I'm in one of those positions where it's like I could be gender neutral, but I don't care enough for
Sure.
a label.
And that's fine.
Yeah, like I don't. For a lot of different people, like your gender is a part of who you are,
Mhm.
regardless if you're female, male, or any other
Mhm.
label. Like for me, I'm like, I know. It's never been a part of my identity.
Yes.
Until people started treating me different because of my assumed gender.
But I mean, I think the problem isn't the assumption. I think the problem is the way the genders are treated.
Exactly.
Because of the genders that they are.
Mm-hmm. Actually, when I was younger, I had a lot of internalized misogyny. Because I was like the whole, I'm not like other girls, because other girls were always painted to be, like, I forgot all my terms. I don't know, to be shallow, to be petty, like all sorts of things that are obviously not true. Not because of your gender, because of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was one of those, special snowflakes of like, oh, I'm not like other girls. Like, I like these things. I like things that guys like. And then later I learned like, wow, that's just as bad as the people who called girls, whatever I didn't like.
Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't matter.
It shouldn't
matter. It doesn't matter what you like.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if what colors you wear. This is silly things. And that's the sense where the social construct doesn't really need to happen. There are dudes that cook better than their girlfriends, and that's fine. So
really, everyone should learn how to cook because everyone needs to eat to live.
Yes. So I mean, it's not like, hey, woman, get back in the kitchen. It's like, hey, you should learn how to cook. Yeah. Get back in the kitchen. Why don't you get in the kitchen? Because if I die, then you won't be able to cook for yourself, you idiot. So
I saw posts like women belong in the kitchen, men belong in the kitchen, kids belong in the kitchen. Everyone belongs in the kitchen because the kitchen has food.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, the roles are really just what it has become over time in civilized society. And so I mean, there are things that we do socially and culturally. I use those two interchangeably.
Okay.
Because, so I mean, we don't talk about poop.
You don't.
Yeah, well, most people don't talk about poop.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And the social norm is just to not talk about poop.
Mm-hmm.
Or not talk about the menstrual cycle or sex or whatever. It's
farting.
Yeah.
Good God, why do people hold in farts?
Farts are hilarious.
They are. They smell bad though, but it's only for 10 seconds.
Yeah. Pain is temporary.
Unless you're holding in a fart, then it's however long you hold it in.
Do you know about Tycho Brahe?
I do not know.
Tycho Brahe was an astronomer who threw extravagant parties. He was actually an astronomer. He did awesome mapping of the stars and stuff. Mm-hmm. But he also threw awesome parties. I think he had broken or burned his nose at some point and had a gold nose replacement thing.
Hella.
And he died because a duke or something, a high class person was at his house and they were hosting dinner, and it's rude to get up from the table before the duke does, and so he had to pee and he held it in for too long, and that's how he died.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And so like these social things that are arbitrary and stupid, like, do clearly have consequences. In the funny sense, like, yes, a man died, but in the funny sense, he held in his pee so long that he died is really funny, and also hundreds of years ago. So
we've waited long enough to laugh at it.
Someone far in the future, someone like, if I died today, you can laugh about it. It's fine. And you can laugh about it because I mentioned it right now.
Oh.
Like, oh, how extremely even more ironic that he mentioned that he was going to die today. Haha, he died today.
Yeah.
Jinxing it.
Craig, where's some wood?
I'm not superstitious, though. I don't really care. Whatever happens. But there are clear repercussions out of these social norms.
Mm-hmm.
And if we value these social norms so highly that it starts hurting people, then we should take a close look at these social norms and analyze, why do we hold them and why have they harmed people? And maybe we should do something else to make sure that they don't harm people. So, I mean, like, as far as gender goes, I feel like an easier approach would be just not to care. But, you know, every boy is told that being girly is bad, and every girl is told that being boyish is bad. And so from a very early age, we just create this division, and then it extends for forever. And then we get this inner hatred of ourselves anytime we do girly things or boyish things, vice versa. And now at this point, I don't care. Maybe that's what we should be valuing. Just not caring about gender whatsoever.
That would be nice.
I had really long hair in high school, and occasionally, like stores or something, people would call me man. And then I would turn around and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And like, yeah, maybe then I was like, I'm not a girl. But like, honestly, I look like a girl from behind. That's fine. Mm-hmm. It's understandable that you called me ma'am. Okay.
It'd be nice if at least like one step toward that whole not caring about gender, if they created like, a gender neutral pronoun, at least in English. Which, I mean, right now the substitute is they, which I've heard some people use the argument that, I can't use they as a pronoun for you,
because it's plural.
Because it's plural and grammatically incorrect. It's like, okay, that's...
No, it's actually been used for singular.
Yeah.
And other things.
I think it's changed a bit, but just that argument, it's like, I've heard you say y'all before, don't even.
Exactly. And I mean, I tend to be rather stick up my butt about grammar, but that's not even really, like...
That's a social contract. Santiago, let it go.
Yeah. No, but it's important because it's the way that humans communicate. And if we're all speaking the same language, then it makes it a lot easier to communicate.
Yeah. I mean, up to a point.
So, I mean, just use good grammar. Like, it's so bad nowadays. Oh my gosh, where have the English teachers gone?
It's the evolution of communication. As long as you can tell what's being communicated, that's how we evolved from Old English.
It's going to turn into the Tower of Babel soon enough, but it'll be actual babbling.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Chaos reigns.
Yeah. But grammar makes sense because of that point I just made. With gender, like, oh, well, I have to treat you like a woman because women have to be treated this way. Like, do you have to treat a woman more gently than you treat a man? Like, so what is it about, like, treating a man more roughly that a woman can't handle? And what is it that, the gentle things that we're giving to women that other men actually can't handle? So it's like, why don't we just treat everyone nicely and we don't have to deal with that problem?
Isn't that the question?
Yeah.
Well, part of it's like, at least, in America, it's supposedly founded as a Christian nation. So like a lot of these things are rooted in the Bible, and the Bible is surprisingly misogynistic in the sense that women were considered basically property. And the whole Adam and Eve story of, and someone did make a point about that. I can't quote it exactly, but basically, when confronted with how women were treated, like, I think the example was like, just white straight males were like, oh, well, God's the one who punished Eve for her actions, and we're just, carrying out his punishment as he wanted.
That sucks.
I mean, like, that's...
No, yeah.
It's an example, but...
Yeah, but it's...
Essentially, that's kind of...
Why is this defensible?
Because it's in the Bible, Santiago, and the Bible is law. Unless, you really want to eat some seafood, in which case the law doesn't really... It's outdated anyway.
Yeah. Do you know about divine command theory?
No.
Okay. So,
explain it for our audiences and I'll listen.
In moral philosophy, divine command theory says that, like, so God, established premise. Then God gave us the word, like his command in the Bible. Accepted premise. Then if we go from there, so everything that God says you have to do. That is his command. And so you should, morally.
Yeah.
Morality in divine command theory comes from God, not ourselves, not our experiences, from God. And so everything that the Bible says, like, morally, you have to do. Regardless of if you feel good or bad about it, you have to do it because that is God's command. Moral law comes from God. And so, if true, you have to do everything that the Bible says.
Let's bring back some slaves.
Yeah, let's, no more seafood. Is this work for me? So I guess I'm working on the Sabbath. Well, it's not Saturday, but the accepted Sabbath.
You're right.
So abomination.
I get to throw stones at you.
Yeah. So morality comes from God. Those things are immoral rather than just you shouldn't do them, but like immoral.
Like death penalty.
Yeah. If God's command was you have to kill unworthy children, and it said that in God's command, you would have to.
It does say you have to kill disobedient children.
Yes, it does. And so the dilemma there is what we as humans find, rather than just say morally reprehensible, we just find it appalling. We have to betray that feeling because God said so. Yeah.
To play devil's advocate and to justify, really the people who, in turn justify following weird commandments. One of the arguments is that even though it feels wrong, you're born sinful. So it's just like you're original sin talking. So you have to, if something doesn't feel right, just trust God because it's probably going to work out in the end.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But two things come to mind when it comes to like this, moral debate on is divine
command theory.
Divine command theory, right? Or or is this actually really bad? One is slavery. The Bible advocates for slaves, and two is raping a woman. You can rape a woman as long as you marry her later. But it's like if you were to talk to someone, this day and age, a Christian, say, "Hey, are slaves good or bad?" Like, no, they're bad. Like, oh, well, God says they're okay.
Yeah.
Like, now what do you think?
Yeah. Well, the South will rise again.
They're rising.
But so yeah, that's the quandary with divine command theory. And then there's this other establishment that so where morality comes from and where we judge morality. So there's in that class a fun example of there's a man who inherited some money from a deceased family member, and he decides to donate it to charity. So there's intent-based morality, there's action-based morality, and result-based morality.
Okay.
Those might not be the words themselves, but interchangeably. Intent-based morality says, well, he had the intention to have this money go to children. So he did a good job. Let's say that money ends up being embezzled by some drug lord and it ends up hurting children. Regardless, the man who gave to charity is good, morally, intent-based. Through action-based, it's the actions themselves that are moral rather than the intent or the result. So the man gives to charity, but he actually knew that it would be embezzled by this drug lord to hurt children, and that's why he gave it to the charity.
Oh.
But he gave money to charity. Therefore, good action.
Okay.
And then the third being result-based morality. The man with a full intent to give to charity gives to the charity, gets embezzled by the drug lord, and so children are hurt. Children are hurt, bad action. So the man should be punished for that. And that's where you can determine morality from. It would make sense to remain consistent in one of those whenever you are making moral laws. And so I feel like socially, most people are intent-based. That regardless of whether or not the man, regardless of if his money goes to hurting children and gets embezzled by the drug lord, he intended to help children. What a good person. And that's generally what's accepted. I think consequentialism is the one that's result-based. The consequentialist would go, nope, that man did an action that came up with bad results. Bad.
That enabled someone else, okay.
Yeah. Regardless of his intent, regardless of whether he knew what was happening, bad action.
Yeah, what was the road to hell paved with?
Good intentions.
All right.
And then the action-based, which seems to be the most like questionable as humans. I feel like a robot would probably look at that and be like, yeah, good action.
Yeah. Technically good.
Yeah. I feel like the least people subscribe to that one because it makes little sense as to whether or not the action resulted in something good or the intent of the person doing something good.
Which morality is more based on, the actual person rather than just the act by itself.
Value judgments on behavior.
Right.
So we're generally intent-based. So going back to like white lies, if someone, I think the example is always like, so a mass murderer is looking for their next victim, and let's say this random mass murderer, let's name him Patrick, is going, I'm going to kill Sally.
Oh, cool. That's another coincidence,
and then
right?
he comes to me and goes, where is Sally? Now, if I was a action-based, moral-driven person, I would say, if I lie, that is bad. Sally's right over here. Kill Sally. Oh, well, I did a good action. I did not lie. If it's intent-based, I don't want Sally to die. I'm going to say, she's in South Dakota. You're going to have to go down there. Sorry. Cool. Saved a life.
But you lied.
I did lie, but the intent was protecting a life. Therefore, good. And then the consequentialist also says, good, someone didn't die. Christianity seems to flip-flop between consequences and intent.
Very much so.
A lot. And so whenever it says, oh, if you look at another woman lustfully, you've sinned twice over, I think that was what it was. Yeah. Or you've already committed adultery in your heart. Intent-based morality. But then goes the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yep.
Consequentialist judgment.
It's just whatever they feel like at the moment.
Yeah. Law seems to be interested in action-based morality.
Regardless of intention.
Regardless of intention, and in some cases, mostly regardless of result. So let's say you park your car in a fire zone, but you are just running in, grabbing something, coming back out, like 2 seconds. You come back and the cop is giving you a ticket. You're like, come on, man. I was in there for like 2 seconds. I'm like, sorry, you parked in the fire lane.
Rules are rules.
Yeah, rules are rules. Regardless of intent or consequences. There was not a fire. A fire truck didn't come in and like, oh no, there's someone's car here. I can't park here. There's a fire. Like, nothing happened. Therefore, but still, rules are rules. You get a ticket, you have to pay that ticket because you violated the rule. Our society is very inconsistent in all of these judgments.
Definitely.
So law being very action-based, whereas our reason for enacting these laws is generally intent-based. And sometimes, usually, consequence-based. Most of the time, intent leads to the consequence, and that's why they're correlated so closely. If I intend to do something good with my money, I also hope for the good consequence too. So the two are generally linked, but society needs to make a decision based upon whether, and I think this is actually more just in America. Chris Ryan has this fun example of whenever he was in Spain, he was parking his bike, and there were like a row of other bikes parked, and there was a sign that said like, no parking. There was a cop right there. He like stopped and asked the cop, he's like, can I park my bike here? Like there's all these other bikes, but it also says no parking. He's like, usually we don't care. So the culture there says like, yeah, there's a rule, but like in this case, it doesn't really matter. Like there's no fire or whatever. You're good. Nothing's going on here.
There's no negative consequence.
Yeah.
At the moment. Okay.
But at least in America, law is so strictly action-based.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't even matter the intent or the consequence. You just suffer the consequences of doing an action. Which is strange.
Yeah, it is. It is really not fair for some parts. Yeah.
I think that I use the reducto ad absurdum logical tool quite a bit in order to take apart morality, to be able to understand like, okay, well, does this work in this instance? Okay, what about in this instance? In this instance? And therefore, less things are logically susceptible to the slippery slope. Hence why I say don't punch Nazis. And I was having this argument with my friend Jordan. Hi, Jordan. I don't know if you listen to this. That I was saying, like, no, don't punch Nazis. You can't punch people in general. Just because they hold a terrible view, it doesn't mean that they should be punched. Don't punch Nazis. And he was like, but if all Nazis are punched, then they know not to be Nazis. Society is telling them very strongly, like, this is the result that you get from being a Nazi. You get punched. Fair. I'll give them that.
What advocates for like violent disciplining of anything that you don't agree with.
Exactly. And so that's why there's like moral gray areas and stuff, is because we haven't subjected the logic to every situation possible. And so like if there's a crack in it, boom, slippery slope. And so it's like, all right, punching Nazis, cool. All right, what else is socially acceptable for violent discipline in order to stop it from happening? Nazis, all right. White supremacy, cool. Black Panthers,
My personal go-to is punch anyone who advocates for violence. Give them what they
including
want.
yourself, because you are advocating for violence.
You know what? Maybe. No, or not that I'm advocating for violence. I'm just giving them what they want. So it's really reactionary.
You're advocating for punching people.
I'm advocating for punching people who think punching is okay.
Advocating punching. That is advocating violence.
It's a moral gray area. Okay? Just a gray area.
Yeah. And that's the problem. the more gray areas that we allow, please drive safely.
Too late.
The more holes that we get like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to go in both directions.
Mm-hmm.
If you go like, all right, like being a Nazi is bad because Nazis advocate for killing people that aren't white. But then there's this like other side of the spectrum that not necessarily Black Panthers. Black Panthers are generally an ideology of defending oneself from oppression. But like more extreme than Black Panthers are people that like want to kill all white people, which is the same thing. So that's just as morally reprehensible. We shouldn't allow that too.
Yeah.
Just because, and I went into this argument with Jordan as well, that like, we like argued until like 5 a.m. Great. Racism shouldn't apply in only one direction.
Are you talking about reverse racism?
No, it's just racism. If you treat a white person differently
because
they're white, that's not reverse racism. That's just racism.
That's true.
You're just treating a person differently, negatively, because of their race. That is racism.
Okay.
Because the definition of racism doesn't say like, oh, or the person who is in power or the person who is oppressed. It's just treating people negatively based on race alone. That's racism.
What I'm going to add in is just like, especially with, white people and Black people,
Mm-hmm.
like Black people can be racist toward white people.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's never going to be in the same scale that white people are racist toward Black people, at least here in America.
We can imagine an alternate universe where that is true.
Yeah, well, this is all with context to history too. So.
Yes. But I mean, racism is racism, and it has to go both ways. Like, you have to not allow it whenever white people do it, and you have to not allow it whenever Black people do it, and whenever anyone else does it. My parents are like, of that generation, like, are just kind of subtly racist.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I think most people our age's parents are subtly racist, or
Yes.
even more than subtly racist.
At least one of my parents definitely is.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh, our waitress is Black. Don't say anything about it.
Like, okay.
The fact that you whispered about it made it that much more uncomfortable for everyone involved.
It wasn't racist until you said that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then the other thing is just like calling someone Black because they are, it's not racist. Like, you can call me Hispanic because I am Hispanic, and you don't have to whisper it to anyone. So it's like, oh, that gentleman over there, what did he look like? He had this like buzzed on the sides haircut, the long thing. It was like,
Black,
everyone has that haircut. Describe him more. And it's like, well, he's Hispanic.
Like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm Hispanic. And everyone does have this haircut. It's okay. And that's a joke from Mad TV, I think. I don't like taking credit for other people's things. That's one of my pet peeves. Like whenever you say something to your friend, and then your friend says it louder, and then everybody
like,
laughs.
Oh,
yeah.
Like that was mine.
Yeah. That's been a large part of my life. It's just like, this thing. And they're like, ha, this thing. And then everybody laughs. And it's like, oh.
You're like, I am the funny one.
I said that joke.
You can do nothing without me.
Yeah. Which was a Key and Peele sketch, I think. Giving credit where credit is due. But with the race thing, like, it has to go in all directions, or else you're still being unfair. And so, what is it that we're mad at? Are we mad at oppression from white people, or are we mad at oppression in general? We should be mad at oppression, regardless of who does the oppressing. And so, if Gandhi allegedly, even less allegedly, I think he did like cheat on his wife many, many times. Cheated on his wife, we should probably look at that and be like, hey, look, the dude cheated on his wife. Was he a great person? Yeah. He cheated on his wife? Also, yeah.
Maybe not as great and flawless as we originally thought, but
sure.
Man has flaws. My issue with like the whole racism issue, especially with like, you know, people saying, you know, these this group who is oppressed is also being racist back. Like, in comparison, at least, it's such a small scale to what they're experiencing that if anyone had to stop first, it shouldn't be them. Yeah, because it's like a retaliation sort of thing. The person, like the group who was originally, you know, being racist and oppressive, they should stop first.
Yeah. But it shouldn't be encouraged in the first place.
No.
And we really shouldn't, like, allow it either. Like, again, we're mad at oppression.
Yeah, no.
So.
But that's what the argument is usually whenever, you know, the minority, you know, retaliates. And they're like, hey, you don't want this suppression. Why are you turning around and giving it to us? You should stop. Like, that's usually the defense. But it's never like, oh, you're doing it because, you know.
Yeah. But that's also the moral equivalent of he started it. So are we looking at this from like an action-based morality thing, or is it like an intent-based? I mean, intent-based. Are you intending to oppress the other person because they oppressed you first? Are you intending to oppress people? That's bad.
That's true.
So, don't oppress people. Don't even intend to oppress people, because that's bad. Yeah.
In a perfect world, yeah.
Are we trying to do that?
At this point, I'm pretty sure it's impossible. We've been going at it for millennia.
Yeah, but I mean, what, just like give up? Well, perfect worlds are impossible.
Yeah.
Let's just...
Not to stop fighting for it, but like, you know, everything works in theory. But like, there's always going to be, you know, exceptions. And I mean, when people first initially made rules, it probably wasn't with the intention of like, well, you know, there's gray areas here, but for the most part, you know, we're going to separate good and bad.
Yeah.
But then, like, maybe, for example, no stealing. You pull a Jean Valjean and you steal bread so you can help your kids and your family live. But, like, it's action-based.
Yeah. Law is action-based.
Yeah, and so you serve however many years in prison for that.
Yeah. Great musical, though.
Yeah. Awesome musical. But, you know, personally, I think, like, there's always going to be flaws, but at least we can try to tweak the system to be better.
Yeah. I'm forgetting the time that I even started this, but I think we've been talking a while.
We've been talking a lot, yeah.
Sorry that I was the one talking most of the time.
It's okay. We're going to title this one Interview with Santiago, featuring Sally.
Oh, jeez.
We can do a part 2.
Yeah, I don't like when that happens, though. I did it one other time, and I felt just as bad then as I do now.
Oh,
no. Because it was not my intent. I intend to have a conversation. I intend to have a conversation. Regardless, you had me over here, and I forgot to bring back your container that you gave me food last time.
That was the whole point. Like,
yeah.
That was the whole... I didn't even want to do an interview. I just wanted the container back.
Yeah, no, like I was a quarter of the way here
And you're like, oh.
God dang it. That's what I forgot.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I give you one of my nicer ones because I didn't actually expect you to bring it back.
I will bring it back eventually, somehow. Sally, thank you for doing this with me.
It's no problem, Santiago. I hope you feel unburdened,
Yeah,
at least a little bit.
Where can we find your things?
Oh, God. Well, if you'd like to find my very controversial Twitter account, it is Tova_shrimp. Tova spelled Toevah. And for any of my artsy stuff that we can discuss about in this segment of the podcast, you can find it on Instagram, Vandever.
Yeah.
And same thing on Facebook.
Yeah. Find some cool cosplays and stuff. You're a really good cosplayer.
Thank you.
I don't cosplay enough to try to get to that level.
I've quit cosplay for a little bit, so I'm at a lower level now.
But yeah, you'll find some awesome pictures of that. Oh, what about like your artsy Instagram? The one where you take pretty pictures.
Oh, my personal aesthetic Instagram, where I try to become Instagram famous, is of cedar and close with a period in between each word.
Yeah. There are some really good pictures in there.
Oh, thank you.
Also,
amateur photography.
Yeah. There's also some cats.
Oh, yeah.
Cats.
Definitely.
It's one cat, but it's multiple pictures of the same cat. So.
Being cute.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm Santiago Ramones. You can find all the things that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. If you like the podcast, because apparently people listen to it, you can let me know, leave reviews or something, or really just let me know. Like on my website, there's a little contact form. You can contact me. It's fun. I'd like to know who is listening to this. Yeah, but I make music. That's also on my website. And I end every podcast with my 3 things, which are love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.